Let's try this big boy right here. That one's, you could eat that. It's starting to get a little tough. What's up, Lazy Dog fam? Hope everybody out there is having a wonderful day. We got okra, lots and lots of okra here behind me that we need to pick off these 3 rows for this Ruiz variety. So today we're going to be looking at this variety, picking all this okra, seeing how much we get. Then we're going to go over to our fall tater plot, see what's kind of going on there, seeing if any of those have sprouted yet, although it's been a while since we planted them. And then later in the video, I'm going to show you the prettiest fig you have ever seen. So we've done 2 plantings of okra this year. We did 1 planting, more of a trial right here on this row. You can see all these plants here are toast. We did that in kind of late spring. Tried about, I don't know, 6 or 7 different varieties there. They did okay, but it was real hot and dry during that time, so we didn't get a whole lot off of it. And then we turned around and planted 3 rows of this Ruiz variety, and we're going to get lots and lots of okra here. So from that first planting, that trial we didn't get a whole lot of production because it was so hot and dry. We got enough production for me to compare the varieties a little bit. I think my favorites were the Stewart Z-Best, the Gold Coast, and then the Longhorn okra on the end there. But like I said, not a whole lot production to give them really a fair assessment. I did like those 3 varieties. I know I like this Ruiz variety here. So we grew this one last year. A viewer sent us seeds from these. That's his last name, so that's what we're just calling this variety here. We did have some of these seeds on our website. Hopefully after this year we'll have a lot more. So we planted these 3 rows, I think a couple months ago. I don't remember exactly when it was, and I probably should have already picked it once. We got some of those pods in there 7 or 8 inches long, but the production kind of just snuck up on me. The plants have looked good from the start, but it seemed like we were waiting a while to get them to actually make some okra. So I had started to get a little impatient with these plants a couple weeks ago, because I was like, surely y'all are going to start producing some okra at some point. You just keep growing and growing and growing. Now, I didn't put any fertilizer down when we planted these, because I know if you over fertilize okra, you'll make all plant and not a whole lot of okra. So I didn't think that was it, and I was thinking, well, maybe those field peas we had planted here before, maybe they added a lot of nitrogen to the soil, and that's why we're getting so much plant and no okra to this point. But then I got to kind of looking back when I planted it, and it's been about 60 days since we planted it, so the timing is about right for when it should start producing. Now we do have some variable plant height here, so those plants on that end of the row down there are a good foot or so taller than some of these on this end, but I think that's all to do with my overhead sprinkler here, so we don't have this okra on drip. Just been using this tripod sprinkler when we need it, and the way this thing throws water, especially when it's kind of downhill like this plot is just putting a lot more water down there than it is up here, especially if the wind is blowing kind of down this way. So this up here hasn't been getting as much water, that's why it's shorter, and that down there is taller. But regardless of the plant height, they all started kind of producing at the same time. So you can see what the pods look like there. That big one is a little bigger than I like to let them get. That one may be tough, it may not be tough. It has a lot to do with how well hydrated these plants are. We'll try a few out after we pick them all and see at what length these things are getting tough currently. But that one up top there is about a perfect size. So I'm going to go through here and harvest all this okra. We'll see how much we get. We'll also see at what length those pods are kind of getting tough and inedible. Now, if I was just growing this okra to eat and I wasn't planning on saving any seeds from it, I would probably prune some of those lateral limbs as I was going through there and harvesting. But since we're growing this for seed as well, at some point we're going to stop harvesting this okra to eat, and we're going to let it just produce on out, let the pods dry, and collect the seeds from those pods. So I'm not going to do any pruning on this okra, at least right now, so we can maximize that pod production later on when we're wanting to get more seed. All right, that didn't take too long to get those there. Not a massive harvest, but we got ourselves a mess there, enough to make us a good batch of okra and tomatoes. And speaking of okra and maters, we got a really easy recipe for okra and maters over rice on our website at lazydogfarm.com. For those of you who swear you don't like okra, I would say this: try that recipe. Try you some okra and maters over rice. Got to use fresh okra. Don't use some boiled canned okra, whatever. Use some fresh okra. Try that. I promise you, it should change your mind about okra. Now back to our harvest here. So for these 3 rows behind me, as I was going through there cutting that okra, about half the plants had pods on them. The other half had tiny pods or was just starting to flower. So we're not in full production mode with these 3 rows yet. I imagine in a few weeks we'll be cutting a bucket or so twice or maybe even 3 times a week. Now one thing that was interesting to me as I was going through there, I had one plant that had a red stalk on it. So all these plants here have a green stalk on them. This is a green okra variety, as you see here. But there was one plant that had a red stalk, and it's putting off pods like this with a red top and a little bit of a red tip. I don't really understand that because I saved all this seed from last year from my Ruiz okra planting. I didn't have any other okra planted at the time when I saved all this seed. I don't know if that's just a mutation, why that plant looks different than the others. The pod shape and the ribs on the pod look exactly the same. We're just throwing off a little red color on that one plant. So this right here is about the ideal picking size for me. I want to come in here and harvest them when they're about this size, about 4.5 inches long. Now some of them have gotten a little big on me, like you see here. Some of these are somewhere between 6 and 8 inches long. So these 4.5 inch pods here, we know those are going to be tender every single time. Good raw okra just to eat outside. Nice crunch, really good flavor on those there. And when you get to this size right here, some of these could be throwaways or food for the worms, especially if it's real hot and dry outside. If you got a little moisture in the soil, they tend to stay tender at longer lengths. So this one here is about 6.5 inches long. And that one's still nice and tender. Let's try this big boy right here. That one's, you could eat that, but it's starting to get a little tough. So the Ruiz okra, at least in this plot here, giving a little overhead water about every 3 or 4 days, assuming no rainfall, seems to be staying tender at, you know, close to 8 inches or so, which is a good thing. That means you don't have to pick the okra as often. You don't have to come in here and pick it every 2 days. It also means you get more per harvest, because if you can let the pods get that big and they stay tender, you got a lot more okra in your bucket than if you're picking a bunch of small pods. So we'll be sure to keep you all updated on the harvesting here, especially once we get to the point where we're harvesting buckets at the time. I'm pretty excited because on that first row over yonder, we just ate a little bit of okra earlier in the year. We're about to eat a lot of okra right here, and probably even gonna pickle some okra. And if I come up with a real good pickled okra recipe, I'll be sure to put that on our website at lazydogfarm.com. All right, now let's check on these fall no-till taters here, which have tested my patience, to say the least. Now we've got a little pigweed in here, but y'all just ignore that. But I think about a month ago, we planted 3 rows of taters right here. This first row, we planted Baltic Rose from our spring crop. Planted Huckleberry Gold in the second row from our spring crop. And then we planted some red taters right here in this third row. And these are ones that we saved from spring as well, but this is going on a 2-year seed stock saving process with these red taters. Now we don't have a full row on any of these varieties yet, but it has started looking a lot better in the last few days. Like I said, it had me worried a little bit. This particular plant right here that's considerably larger than all the rest, it came up pretty quick, but then I was just seeing nothing else coming up. So I was getting very close to the point where I was just going to let these no-till pumpkins run all over this plot. Forget the taters, we'll just let the pumpkins crawl all over the place, and at least maybe we'll get some more pumpkin production out of the deal. So the other day I was in here pulling some pigweed and I accidentally pulled up one of those whole taters we planted, and it just had roots all over it. Looked really, really good. And then a few days later, started seeing a little bit of that. So in just a few days, we went from nothing on this huckleberry gold row to tater plant there, a foot over, tater plant there, tater plant there, tater plant there, one every foot, just like we planted. And we started kind of seeing the same thing with our red taters. A tater plant every foot or so popping up. Now this Baltic rose here still hasn't shown me a whole lot. You can't really tell there's any plants there. But if we look really, really close there, there's a tater plant coming up. So now we know they didn't rot, and I didn't really think they were going to rot because the top layer of this no-till plot stays pretty dang dry. So what caused the delay a little bit? Why did the red taters sprout so much faster than some of the others? And I think it all had to do with the sprout size on the taters we planted. So most of those red taters, I had those sitting in my office in a bucket. I wasn't really intentionally chitting them, but I was kind of chitting them, and I had longer sprouts on those when I planted them. The Baltic rose ones that are just starting to come up now had tiny little sprouts on them, and the huckleberry gold was kind of somewhere in the middle. So they have sprouted pretty much in order of their sprout size when they were planted, which tells me that especially when you're planting fall taters like this, it's better to chit them and get some good sized sprouts on them before you put them in the ground. Otherwise it could be a while before you see any tater vegetation. We don't really ever chit them when we plant them in the middle of February, and we usually don't have any issues. But I think for fall, you definitely want to go in the ground with some sprouts on them taters. So in just a matter of a few days, we went from the game plan of letting these polar bear pumpkins swallow up this entire plot to, well, we may need to trim these back a little bit. We may need to keep them at bay so we can keep those tater plants there in the sun a little bit. So now we're going to have to actively come in here and keep these pumpkin plants at bay somewhat. So I'm just going to reach back here, prune that off. We'll throw that out of the plot there. Make sure these taters are in full sun here. They don't get swallowed up by the pumpkins. Like I said, probably have to do this every few days because these pumpkins are growing like crazy. It's a jungle in there. But I think we can keep them right here along this border, keep our taters without being smothered. And hopefully, if everything keeps going at the pace it has the last few days, we're going to end up with close to full rows of taters here. Hopefully, those Baltic rose will come along there. The huckleberry looks like it's filling in really nicely. Same thing with the red taters. So maybe not every tater we planted will sprout, but if we can get, 80% of them to sprout, that'll make it worth our time. Now back over here close to where we started the video, I'm going to show you what I think may be the most beautiful fig I have ever laid eyes on. So a couple weeks ago I told you about this generi fig variety here. You can see how loaded up they are. This is a late producing variety. It's going to produce in late summer for us down here. It takes a lot of patience. Those figs sit on there for a long time because they get quite large. And on that previous video I showed you just how big these figs can get. Problem is, that one was half eaten. Birds, bugs, something had gotten half of it, so we really didn't get to enjoy it. Now we came out here a couple days ago. There was a nice one on here. Titus was with me, so I gave that one to him, but I got one for me sitting right over there. And there it is, right there. Now, isn't that pretty? That's about as close as perfectly ripe that we're going to get without risking losing this thing. Now the fig experts will tell you that a fig is perfectly ripe when it starts kind of free hanging, kind of drooping from the main limb there. I don't know that that one's doing it all the way, but it's close enough. I don't want to risk it. We're going to get it now. Now I was trying to find a baseball or tennis ball or something for size comparison purposes, but I guess Stella's hidden them all. All I could find in my buggy was this tape measure. So this is a normal size tape measure. That gives you an idea just how big this generi fig is. So enough talking, let's enjoy this beauty here. Now most figs you can eat in one bite. This one here is going to take 2 or 3 bites. We're surely going to enjoy it. Let's open it up and see what it looks like. Oh yeah, isn't that pretty? Look at the inside of that there. That gum. I've got a lot of flavor in it. I would say it's pretty close to peak ripeness just based on all the flavor inside of it there. You could about get full off these right here if you had your 2 or 3 of them. That would make a fine breakfast in the morning, just a few of these. Now I've gnarled this one up a little bit, but this is what they call a sugar fig. So with figs you have kind of 3 main different flavor profiles. You got berry figs, honey figs, and sugar figs, and you've got some that kind of sit between those 3 main flavor distinctions there. This one tastes like a quintessential sugar fig. If you ever tried brown turkey, this one kind of tastes a lot like brown turkey, except the figs are a lot bigger. I think it may be better than brown turkey. So that one's all gone, but hopefully we get a chance to enjoy a lot more of these generi figs before the fig season is over. As you can see there, the trees are absolutely loaded. It's just a matter of the fig maturing without something getting to it before it's perfectly ripe. I did see the other day, I was watching a video that the Millennial Gardener had done on figs, and he puts these little breathable cloth bags around his to protect them from anything. That's not a bad idea to do with these real big figs like this that give you so much to eat with one fig. And I mentioned this on the previous video when we talked about the generi fig earlier. We should have plenty of trees on our website early next year from this particular variety. It's a fast grower. I should be able to take a lot of cuttings off the 2 generi trees I have. It was pretty easy to propagate last year, so I expect it to be easy to propagate again this year, and we should have lots of figs available if you guys want to give this one a try. So I hope you enjoyed the video today. Nice to get a solid okra harvest there. Nice to see some progress with those fall taters popping out of the ground, and always nice to come back here and get a delicious fig snack. And if you were lucky enough to grab some of that Ruiz okra seed off our website earlier this year, let me know what you thought about it. Let me know how it's doing for you, how you would compare it to some of the other varieties you've grown. Also, if you decided to plant fall taters like we did, how are they doing? Are they coming up yet? Or are you getting a little worried about them like we were a week ago? If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to check out our affiliate links below. A lot of great companies that we use in our gardens here at Lazy Dog Farm. Even got some coupon codes for some of those companies so you can take advantage of those discounts. Don't forget to go check out our website, lazydogfarm.com, where you'll find that okra and mater recipe I was telling you about. A lot of other good stuff over there as well. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to subscribe, hit that notification button, like, and share, and we'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.